Dr. Kimberly Moore, my company, Envision Moore Consulting Group. It's a national strategy and consulting firm. I would say founded really, 2 to 3 years ago, but really out on the market with the website February of this year. So February 2024.
Awesome. I love what you're doing. And I got to jump right in and say, like, your history is very diverse. You are all over the place in the best way possible with your mission and the way you engage and the way you connect. And just tell me right now, like, I'm going to go like education, government, consulting, like, where do you find your energy to just spread yourself out? And I don't mean too thin. I mean, because I do say that to some people, but for people like you, that's not the case. So where do you get the energy?
So my energy is really about problem solving. And there's so many intersections with these 4 groups that you mentioned, government, education, nonprofit, and the private sector. It's just a matter of whether people come together to look at whether there is an opportunity. That's what I enjoy doing.
That's perfect. Well, kind of walk through with me for the fact of the mindset of somebody that's a multitasker like yourself that has multiple projects going on. That is a very unique skill set. I can empathize and I can connect with you on that. So let's talk a little bit about that from your perspective for others that may be siloed into one specific mission or one specific brand, and they have, whether they want to know if they don't have any backups or anything like that, and they want to kind of build and expand themselves. We're in 2024 is becoming a really good self-reflective year for a lot of people. I have a feeling there's a lot of people that are going to start businesses that didn't think they could before. So kind of help us understand from your end what you do and how you, not even from an energy standpoint, from, let's say, organization or motivations and things like that.
So really, it's always been about the ability to roll with the punches. So really not being afraid of change. Not being afraid of change, embracing change, looking for the opportunities in change. And I think a lot of people get stuck as soon as they hear the CH for change. And that's not where I get stuck. I think about all the possibilities and opportunity. Throw in the fact that I also enjoy being an innovator, which means that you're on the front end and cutting edge of a lot of things. You're willing to do things before someone else has done it or seen it. So I think for me, that's a piece where for some it comes across as multitasking. But I would say to you that I've been thinking about it a whole lot longer than before I put it out on a post. It's just when I introduce it. And the messaging part for me was always about how to make people understand that they too could do it. It's not far-fetched. Here's your opportunity to do something that you didn't think you could do.
I appreciate the way you say that, because that's the number one thing I want to drive home to anyone listening to this. I don't care if you have a $500 million venture capital fund in Palo Alto or you have a $25 beef jerky company in rural Pennsylvania. I want everybody to understand that carving your path is so important. And I don't mean this, I don't want to get into a government conversation, but we are in a place where in the future, you need to have something you need to be able to support yourself, or even just have an interest or have a passion that could be monetized. Everybody, I shouldn't say the word need, but let's just say that, like, it's good to have some sort of diversity as far as where you live your life, and that be also through conversations. Would you say that, here's what I'm trying to get at is would you say that your diverse conversations that you have with people are directly related to the fact of how diverse your business structure is, and your mission as far as career goes?
It certainly is, because, I've always thought of myself first as the CEO of me, which means that I need a diverse portfolio of things that I can do, not the one trick pony. And, when that thing goes and then you're gone, but really trying to be very focused on what the needs are for any of these groups. And if you can address the need, then that's the conversation there. It really doesn't matter what I aspire to do. It's more on what I can do that meets your goals. And if I'm always goal focused on what it is that someone else wants, I think that's the differentiator that's been helpful for me.
That's a good point. And with that, let's talk about today where we are as a culture. People like you are really the future of what's going to hold this country together. And that sounds like a bold statement, but there is a glue and a certain uniqueness to people that are bridging sectors. And when you bridge sectors, if you've ever done it before, it is the most painful thing in the world, and it's the most struggling thing in the world. But for you, it's an embraced opportunity. And talk to me about dealing with the different mentalities, the different personalities, because the reason I want to say this is I want people to understand that what you do is exactly relative to what everybody can do every day to make this place better. So
absolutely.
So elaborate.
So from my vantage point, it really is about meeting people where they are. And oftentimes, depending upon, whether you're a startup or whether you've been in a business for some time, you want to go in there and sell your wares, and there you go. You want to do what you do and just give them that widget. That's not the basis of where I start from. It's where are you? And then where would you like to go? Sometimes that requires minimizing. Even if I think I know the solution walking in the door, it's allowing for time to listen, to walk through some of the pains that they've gone through. Because the thing is, you want to make sure that whatever you're proposing, that you avoid some of those bad, movies that they have playing in their head. So that's always really the approach with sector collaboration, and also being able to point to and share examples of how it worked. Because a lot of times people don't do, not because they don't have a desire, they just don't know. And there are just a lot of people that need to see it, to be able to point back to it where it did work, and being comfortable with giving the examples, knowing that you got to be results oriented first to show them, and then being very open to walking them as fast as they want to go or as slow as they want to go through the process.
I like that you pointed that out, because it's like, it's everybody's they stole the term snowflake. Let's just say I used to say everybody's a snowflake because everybody's unique, and now I can't say it anymore. So what I'll say is it's like I try to say like everybody's like a taste bud. Everybody's unique. But anyway, I'd like you don't just do a universal approach to it, and obviously you can't do that when you're crossing sectors. What are some of the keys that you look? Are you an emotionally driven person when you connect with people, or are you kind of like, how do you connect, or does it matter or do you adapt to who the receiver is, I guess I'd say? Yeah.
Absolutely. You are a chameleon. So if it's someone that focuses first on the heart and what it would do by, accomplishing this, then that's where I start. And that's where my conversation, even with how it gets measured and how we know when we'll reach success. If it's someone that's more results oriented, then I'm going in with data points, and we're going to be looking at hard numbers. So really the flexibility of just being able to hear and really take in a lot of information, and being able to spell it out in a succinct way, 2 to 3 bullets, summarizing an hour of conversation. And people appreciate that. They're like, you got all of that? Yeah, I got all of that. Yeah.
So somebody gave me like a business idea the other day. They were like, oh, what if you did a roll up where every Friday you had all these CEOs and you did an interview with them and with all the different department heads, and then the CEO can just watch the video on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and then not have all these meetings all week long. They can just sit there with their coffee and just catch everybody's bullet points of the week. I thought of it was funny, but then I thought at the same time, I was like, I actually got crazy of an idea. You know what I mean? Because how many of us just, it's the meetings. And I think that's as much of the horrible things that came out of COVID, the best thing is we've become so much more efficient at meetings now, I feel like.
Exactly. And so the whole notion about, meeting to meet, well, then what's the, recognizing your audience. And I think that's a great thing for listeners to be able to catch hold to in this conversation, but really recognizing your audience and what it is they want and how they want to receive the information, and being nimble and flexible enough to do that.
And that's the crucial next level, is taking yourself out of yourself and being 100% focused and in tune with the receiver of your communication, and not being yourself or any of your bias. I really appreciate that. And that's it's a valid point. So talk a little bit about so LinkedIn top voice. All right, let's talk about that. All right. What led to that? And was that a goal driven thing, or was it like, was it a pat on the back you weren't expecting? That I was like, hell
everything's goal driven, Nate. It's about outcomes. So whatever I'm doing, if I'm doing it, then I want to make sure that I understand how to reach the very top. So the great thing about LinkedIn is that you are able to be identified for what it is that and what you're contributing to the conversation. So that's a big deal. but I've actually earned 5 badges for top voice, but you can only show one. So I just kind of trade them out each week and say, okay, what's the new thing? But yeah, that's an aspiration to make sure that how you're presenting yourself, that your prospective customers and even those who are your current customers understand that you're at the top of your game and that you really want to continue pushing. And because when you push yourself, you're also going to be pushing on their behalf as well. So they're getting the very best from you.
Yeah, we are in sync as far as that goes. I like to tell people, it's like I'm not some great sound box from a soapbox. I just got off the couch last week. I'm just strong enough to hold out my hand and bring you with me. That's pretty much what I tell people. And, yeah. So
I love it. I tell you, well, we're on the same page. We are definitely united.
Absolutely. Walk me through the day in the life. All right. Walk me through a day in the life. But as much as you can, kind of help somebody understand that, not necessarily to disparage anybody, but I want people to be prepared, because one of the things about this podcast is I call it the grit of entrepreneur, or the grit behind leadership, or unveiling the grit of leadership, or however you want to phrase it. And I want people to understand, I grew up in the world of Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine. I had all the subscriptions, and I started high school in 1999, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. That's where I am as far as that goes. And I grew up only seeing the glitz and glamour of entrepreneurship. And I was seen as okay, the small, I didn't see the small business owner down the street at that time as an entrepreneur. I only saw the glitz and glamour of the magazine. So tell me a little bit about what it's like your day. And I want people to understand that it's not as easy as we all make it look. You know what I mean? Our job is to make it look easy, but it's not.
You got to make it look easy, as they say, and from the past, never let them see you sweat. So never do that. But know that there's a lot of sweat back there. Probably changed out 5 shirts, to make sure that you don't see that. But what does happen behind the scenes, each day it's looking at new opportunity, and it's looking at not only what you haven't touched, but also referring. I always like to look at that rear view mirror for your current customers. How can you provide additional value? What more can you bring to them that you didn't bring to them a week, a month, a year ago? And I think it's important, because oftentimes when you start your own business, the thought is that, well, I just got to get new, and every day is about new. Well, it's much harder. You want to retain. You don't want to just be continuing to go after new and never retain the old. So it's a focus on both what's in front of me and what's behind me. I do that relative to learning too. So you mentioned LinkedIn, AI, one of the hottest conversations right now. So what am I doing? I am immersing myself into that so that I can have conversations with my clients about that. So a day in the life, working with existing clients, talking and speaking with new clients, looking at ways to further brand. So whether that's doing podcasts, or whether that's the post and being very intentional about the post and what gets communicated on a variety of platforms, and really just kind of doing a pulse check at the end of the day. If these are the 10 things that I'm focused in, and making sure that I'm not getting pulled away from distractions or by distractions, because that's the easy thing to do when you're an entrepreneur, everything, because you want to or feel like there's this sense of accomplishment. So I remove 10 stickies. You got to think about big picture, the big rock. So I try to make sure that that's where my focus stays.
Let's go back a long time. All right. Let's go high school. All right. High school, with you being goal and output driven in current life, were you always like that? And then kind of walk through what that life is like as a kid being that type.
Well, you're going to make me go really far back. And I say really far back. I remember in 5th grade or 4th grade, and that's probably when it dawned on me then, but I was like, okay, maybe it's not, because you don't know how to really put the words together. 4th grade, we had a competition. It was a Christmas competition on drawing the reindeer. I looked in so many books and said I was just going to become an artist overnight to end up getting that perfect reindeer for, my teacher at the time to say, here's the top reindeer. And I thought, really, there's a connection. You work hard and you do these things. That followed me throughout my school year. I mean, I even think about when I made it to, I was in middle school, I was in the band, and I was the last chair. If anybody that's a listener out there and you know what last chair is, they didn't call it that then. They didn't say you were the worst player. I learned that when I got to high school in my freshman year. And I was last chair again. And I thought, what in the world? And there was a young lady, Angela King, who was first chair. She was amazing. And so I thought, how in the world can I aspire? I literally got permission to borrow the trumpet because I didn't have one of my own, the band music stand, and I practiced the entire summer. I came back the next school year. I was first chair and soloist. They could not believe it.
Now that's exactly it right there. So yeah, this isn't it's not a, don't call it a comeback because you ain't never left. You know what I mean? Like you've always been doing this. Oh my goodness. I like that you said that because you made me feel very comfortable, and I'll share the story that I haven't before publicly. So when I was in the same age, I think it was 5th or 6th grade, I was really I had a knack for spelling, and I was in the spelling bees and all that stuff. And my way that I would study, because I was good at it, but I wasn't the greatest. I was the one that would excel past the classrooms, but I would never really make it to county. You know what I mean? And I was always like, I want to get to county. So like I've been an Audible person, video, media all my life, and I'm 5th or 6th grade, and I have this I have a boombox in my room, so I take tape deck out. And I got this book that my mom got me about all the spelling bee words and the PSATs and all this crazy crap. And this is back, we didn't have computers, so this is pre-computer. So I sat down and I opened up the book with all the spelling words, and I just read the entire book into the cassette. And then when I would go to sleep at night, I put headphones on and I would just play it all night long while I was sleeping. And I would just
You're my kind of guy. You know what? I tell people it's not intent. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. You get it. I mean, and that's the thing. But even with, having that kind of grit and that spirit, it really does matter the people that you get exposed to. Because I remember in that same, going down memory lane, my high school teacher, English teacher, and when I was thinking about, what would come next after high school, this is 12th grade, and Laura Young, my English teacher, she said to me, I wrote up, kind of what I wanted to do, what I planned to do after school. And that was to get my degree and come back home being a county of, or a city of 1,500 people, right? And I was going to do government. And she brought me up to her desk and she said, Kim, you have excellent grades. Is this what you want to do? Because you could do anything. And I, as quietly as I possibly could, I said, I want to be a CEO. I literally thought about being a CEO since 14. And she said, well, go back and write that. And I told people, I call it permission to dream, because what do? 7 years later, Florida's youngest CEO to lead the workforce system and first woman of color for my role. So it's amazing what you can do when there's the grit, and then there's the people that's, being your cheerleader.
That's exactly. And with that said, how do you without naming anybody specifically, but what are the criteria when you choose who you want to work with? Because you're in a position now where you don't have to accept every single thing that comes across the table. So now you're in a stage where you're discerning and you're really kind of separating and filtering. Walk me through that process of what are your, triggers in a negative way, but then positives in a good way, I guess. Yeah.
So I think some triggers for me are those conversations where everyone else surrounding the past has been a problem, except you. So I that's a trigger, because I'm like, okay, that there's company and there's a pattern, and so those I try and dig further into and see kind of where the mindset is. Others, those that are ambitious, I'm ambitious as well. And, it's often said you hire yourself, you work with yourself, you kind of do all those things with yourself. But in this case, where I'm on the other end of it, it's really making sure that even though we're ambitious together, that we're realistic on timelines and expectations. So, and feeling and knowing that with that prospective client, that you can have that conversation where it's the respect enough that, hey, I want to get you to where you want to go to. We need to get there together, but let's think about the time frame and let's look at the impact of who will need to be involved. Is this something that you can do, you and I together, or is it going to involve other people? Because if it's people, then we got to do a whole lot of massaging. So those are kind of the criteria. And really, to just be honest with you too, Nate, I'd share is that I am really, really interested in efforts that can be scaled, that can be larger than, because working with, an employer in a network and figuring something out that can then be shared throughout the entire enterprise. I mean, I think that's rewarding for them when they realize that they can be a change agent. And it's certainly what, keeps me fired up as well about being a part of change.
Yeah, it's the point about the distribution and the network and stuff like that. I really, a lot of people look at the wholesale distribution world as like gritty and grimy and all that stuff. And I love it for that. I love warehouses. I'm a nerd. I love logistics. But that piece, learning that right out of high school and learning that world and driving the trucks and then understanding what distribution networks were, going out at 19 and like delivering a truck and meeting an owner and going through, like, that was the piece for me that allowed me to see the scalability of everything. And it was the scalability of information is what I'm trying to say. And like, I think that I compliment like the delivery services and logistics for getting that into my head, because it scales to every aspect of your life. As long as there's something that people want, you just have to build the network. And I think too many people get stuck with their ideas, and then they keep their ideas between them and their friends. They think that somebody's going to figure it out, but they don't realize like nobody knows you're doing it, and everybody wants to know.
That's so important, or that if you share it, then my goodness, like you said, they're going to replicate it, go out and steal it. I like communicating and sharing, because the thing is, if everybody could do it, they'd be doing it. So the fact that there's a track record, then I'm fine. Be a part of the ambassadorship and tell the world about it, because there's a lot to be done. I mean, you're not the only one in the show. And so I think that's the important part too. Looking at not only distribution and sharing of information, but opportunities to collaborate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the next thing. I feel like you're on my screen looking at it. My next question, question was collaboration and understanding that, like, I've done a few collaborations, like in my day. Like I had a pickle company and a vodka company that were both clients of mine. And I happened to, because I read everything from every industry, I started seeing a growth in pickle infusions and everything back, not recently, but about 10 years ago, maybe, or 5 years ago. And so I took those two clients, put them together, and did a pickle-infused vodka, which still to this day is being sold on the shelves across Pennsylvania and other states. But the reason I want to say that to you is, how do you, just like when you think about those clients, what is it like for you? Is it an analog? Like for me, it's analog. I'm Post-it notes everywhere and books like these right here. And like, how do you decide how you're going to connect people? And then like where it is that you feel like, okay, these people are going to dive in this area, and then this is the subject matter. Like, without controlling it too much, you do have to I've learned it the hard way, that you still have to facilitate it with people, because they're not, just like you said, 99% of the people aren't going to be executed. So you still have to push them a little.
Yeah. So a lot of it is looking at temperaments, whether there is a desire to connect, and really helping instill with the client that I understand that what you want to do and what you want to do is great, but hey, we may only impact 100 people. Here's the opportunity to impact 10,000. What if we strategically, I'm here with you, came up with a strategy that once you were firm and good on your end, that we brought in someone else and that they brought the very best to the table that they could bring. And together we create this amazing best practice. It really is the massaging, layering, and helping people to understand that regardless of sectors are sectors just for the sake of category, doesn't mean that you can't work together. You are meant to work together. We are puzzle pieces. And for me, that's the glue that I bring, because not afraid of that, have done that, and willing to be a facilitator and convener in partnership with people that want this thing, but they don't know how to do it.
Exactly. Talk to me a little bit about your podcast. I wanted to guess what the theme. Like, let's get it on.
Okay, so today's actually a great day. So Workforce Insights is a podcast that was launched nearly 2 months ago, and it's bringing leaders from across the country, across a variety of sectors, still focusing in on those 4 groups of education, government, nonprofit, and industry, but across the country. And leaders have not, they have been so amazing at wanting to sit down and have these conversations. We're talking about the landscape in their industry sector, some of the challenges, what's opportunities to collaborate, innovation, and then leadership perspective. And even how they navigated certain challenges and how they support growth in other people. So I think for me, it's a perfect way to do the thing that I love, but at the same time, share it with other people who need to be listening to, wow, they're doing this in this part of the country. Maybe if I call them up, I can do this. So it's almost like matchmaking, if you will, as well. Mm-hmm.
It's that, and I like the way that your layout is of your work, because your work is very present, past, and future. And yeah. I like that. It's not, you don't just live in you live in the moment, you're present. That's not what I mean. What I mean is in the sense that, let's take educational reform, for example. I have 6 kids, and I'm always thinking about what the future is going to look like. And I don't want to share any specific opinions or anything like that, but with, because it's where you are with things, where do you see how the challenges in the future of the educational reform needs to go? And I don't want to seem like a huge jump there, but I'm kind of leading into the fact that if we constantly are just as a society looking at today and the future, and we're not looking at like what's going on in that sense, I don't think, let me back up. I just don't think about it. I think we're really absorbed in our current situations, and we're not thinking about how these kids are going to grow up.
Yeah. So, and I'll give you the reason or the thought process that I had when I got into education. So my start was in private sector, working with industry across the board, economic and workforce development. The whole desire, when I started thinking about education, I thought, man, I think it moves too slow, because businesses, you need to move at the speed of business, and business is asking, why does it take, this long to get the talent that I need? I said, what if it didn't take that long? So hear me, I got to immerse myself. So then I got into education and had an opportunity to do just that, creating, national best practices where we were doing 90-day or less programs. Why? They're like, this is unheard of. It's not that it's unheard of. It's that you listen to the customer, which is, in my case, the business, and the student that you're serving. What do they want? They want to know that there's an opportunity and a job that they can live the American dream on the back end. Employers want to know that they can live not only in the present, but plan for the future. That's the magic. And so my focus on both of those is to be able to share with industry that, yes, you can have education be a major partner in driving your future success. Yes, you need to know the language, and that's why you need a liaison to kind of figure all that out, but it can be done, lived it and done it. Education is to say, listen, here's your customer. These are what your customers are saying. Let's create systems that work for them, and that it's not, thinking of it just from the point of when they grace your stage to graduate. It's the after, it's the comma. And how can we be more comma led than period focused?
I personally can't agree with everything you said, more so. I can't agree with it any more than 100,000%, let's say, because my whole life was, my cousins and my mom or whatever, first couple ones went to college. My mom went to college when I went to high school. So she kind of, I like to say that she cheated a little bit. Like she didn't get it when she was 18. So she doesn't get to say she was the first in the family, even though she beat me by a year. But, what I'm going to say about that is I graduated from high school, and I went to Drexel University in Philadelphia intentionally because of their co-op program. And that was unbeknownst to me. So here's a timeline of like how I did not see this in the future. So I started there in 2003 at Drexel. I graduate because it's a 5-year co-op cycle. You go 6 months in class and then 6 months in the workforce. I ended up getting my co-op internship with beer wholesaler, which then leads, my first job out of high school leads me to where we are today. I then started this business in 2008. It's been an LLC while I was in my senior year in college. I started this LLC, and it's been existent since then and evolved with everything since then. But what I'm trying to say is that I started in 2003 in college. When I went to graduate in 2008, you can imagine June 2008 is nobody's looking to buy you or anybody or anything you have to sell. So basically, it was months of just like nothing happening, and just rejection, and the entire college that built themselves on placing people in the workforce has an identity crisis and a brand integrity issue. And we are all graduating, and it's like one of the most somber graduations I've ever really seen, because everybody was like not latching in the right places, and it wasn't really working out. But I didn't really care because I had already had something, because I did my internship. I didn't take an internship just to go to the copy machine. Like, I stayed in an internship, and then I worked there in between the internships. So I had a foundation. And during my entire time of college, because I was out on the road and selling and door to door, I had like hundreds of businesses that knew me. So I don't know any of that stuff is what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is I didn't know 2008's crash was coming, and the financial crisis and the mortgages and everything like that, and the world was going to collapse in that way. But it did. And where I was okay with was I had come from a blue collar family. I literally had a West Virginia driver's license, and I'm out there introducing myself to QVC and all these other places and Heineken, Miller Coors, and all this, trying to get myself out there. And what I want to tell what you're doing is people understanding that, like, I want to go back to, you'll laugh at this. I was talking about this, the old 12, what do you got to reach out to somebody 12 times in order to get them, right?
Right.
Let me ask you, and this is not a test. What is your real number? Because mine's not 12.
So here's the reason why. So my number is not 12, and I would tell you that my number is 2. Oftentimes it's 1, and I say that because I emphasize a lot on the branding and messaging and network. So the doors get open in advance, or that they have some knowledge of your work. And that's why I tell people you can't just have this great widget if you're not also messaging about what that great widget is and other people are talking about it.
I agree with you. Absolutely. That's one of the things that you got one of my invitations for this. My invitation for guests literally is, I would love to have you on my show, www.thefreemindpodcast.com. Thanks, Nick. That's it. And this year, you're one of just last we booked our 150th for this year. So we have a hell of a year lined up. And it's all CEOs and founders from around the country, actually internationally too. India, Netherlands, a bunch of other places, Geneva, and a few other places. And I'm so excited for that. And I don't say it about me. What I say is about getting excited about being a connector. I was called, and this is dating myself for the terminology, so hopefully we won't get canceled, but I was called the hookup guy. And I was called the hookup guy because I had a guy for everything. So I always, growing up, was like, you need that? Go talk to Nate. Go talk to Nate. And I knew it didn't matter who it was. I had a guy that could do that, and or a girl or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, again. So what I want to say is that people, like, to understand there's a lot of layers we're talking about, is not being so insulated into your idea, into your inner circle, that you don't expose yourself to the other people and you don't expose the other part of the world. Because what happens is, too, we get in these cycles where we're getting the same feedback all day long, and we're in this feedback loop of our inner circle. And it's not until you step outside. I'm gonna admittedly tell you that this is new for me. From COVID, I was a salesman all the way up until COVID. I was a beer salesman. That's what I was. My face was on the logo of beer trucks and all these other things, and that's all true. When COVID happened and March 18th happened, all of my contracts got canceled. Everybody's like, we're done because the bars closed, the brewery closed, and I was nothing. I had no idea what to do. So what I did was I did what I always did. I started going out and saying, oh, here's this product and blah, blah, blah. And nobody wanted to listen to me. Nobody wanted to check my emails. And then it was even harder because everybody was working from home. And if you didn't have a cell phone number prior, you weren't getting a hold of them through the inner patching systems that they're all making up at that time. And so long story short is that I ended up getting involved in distribution of medical supplies, and I jumped into a lot of different areas with the healthcare network and found a void where people couldn't get the information they needed in the products because it was just a melee. So I ended up doing PPE sales and medical supplies to the state of Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland for their COVID tests, masks, everything like that. And that was overnight. And I never left my house. And I stayed in my basement for the entire time. And I just called everybody under the sun and set up email campaigns and cold calling campaigns. And shout out to Tedu over in Pakistan, my buddy Osama. Osama is he's been working with me for years. And he's my number one front end as far as cold calling goes. But what we've learned is what I'm trying to say is that I used to spend hours writing that email. And then it was just, I went through COVID just getting shot down left and right. And then I did exactly like I'm doing now. It wasn't, hey, I have this to sell. It was, hey, here's who I am. Yeah. I would love to do something with you. And leave it so open that they had no idea what it was. And I had CEOs of big hospitals writing back, just being like, who are you? What are you asking me? I'm like, all I wanted you to do was respond so I could get in there, you know?
I love the strategy, and I know that the listeners will benefit from this, because oftentimes it's like, well, how many, letters or emails or whatever, they're doing. And you're like, and I continue to get rejected. And I'm like, no. Rethink your strategy. Don't get so lost in doing the same thing over and over. And I think too, Nate, I mentioned, Workforce Insights was a podcast meant to kind of really break down the silos, hear from sectors about what the possibilities were. But what's going to be launched just this week is the Say More podcast too. And that will focus on the journey of women who are aspiring, either they're at the C-suite level or aspiring to get there. And there are lots of, sometimes there's, pitfalls and ideas. How can we make sure that as a network, as a system, as a group, that we're looking at ways to avoid some of those and even celebrate the success and make sure that there's a support system and network. So you are right. I mean, connecting, and that's been super easy as well, because there's a lot of stories to be told. And people are willing to share. They just need a platform. So I love what you're doing. And I immediately said yes to you. And I know other people who are out there listening are going to say yes to you for that very reason.
Well, I appreciate it. And I really like, it's a big deal for talking to somebody like you when it comes to the education. And then I didn't want to, talk too much about in gender and stuff like that, but I do want to talk about it. And I really want to say that, like, a father of 4 daughters, I know what the future holds. I know what exists. I know the good, bad, and the ugly. I worked in the alcohol industry. I dealt with criminals and drug dealers all day long. And I fear and I get excited about where my kids are going in their future. And where, again, the fear comes is that I know that, like, my stepson's 19 years old. He just started nursing school here locally. And he's got a good head on his shoulder. And then you go down to different kids and stuff like that, and they all have their different personalities and things like that. And I think that, yes, is one of the ways of what you're trying to say is get what I'm trying to say to you is getting intentional about the balance of the platform is what I'm trying to say. So I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, we had 5 guys going, so we need to have 5 more girls going. No, I'm like, hey, I want 10 great stories, and I don't give a shit. What is under their clothes? Like, just give me, that's what's happening. When I use that mentality, I end up getting 6 awesome women and I get 3 dud dudes or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I want to say that, like, any guy, and I'm a former wrestler, rugby player, football player. I'm the quintessential man's man growing up, but I'm also a 4-time girl dad. And I can tell you that the future's bright for women. And anybody that doesn't think that might as well just, why don't you just can make your way down the street and find somewhere else to be, because you just in denial about what's going on.
You're right. There are so many opportunities, and I think it really does make sense that there are platforms that get to highlight that. And I love that what you're doing highlights it highlights leaders and founders in a powerful way, and to hopefully, and I think this is what will happen, people will identify. They're like, wow, you did that, then we can do that. And so thank you for, again, having this platform that does all of that.
No, it's everything. Like, it's not just gender. It's all different styles. So in leadership, leadership is a general term to me. And I try to tell people there's leaders and there's managers, and I'm interested in leaders. Everybody can be a manager. I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but I'm not sorry. Like, I've had many managers, but I don't really remember all of them, but I remember all the leaders I had in my life. And that's kind of where I go with this, is that it doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter your status in life. It's leadership. So, for example, like yesterday morning, I had somebody that's 2 years in on a brand new canned cocktail that they're doing. And, like, they're just getting started. They just graduated college 2 years ago. Another guy just graduated college 2 years ago as well. And he's starting a first clinically dosed, approved amino acid gummies for the fitness industry. And I'm like, and he just, and like, I'm interviewing him, and I'm like, this is it. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're established or not, you're going somewhere. And whether it's that project or another one, that's the other thing I want people to understand. is people like yourself and me. I have a list, I think it's about 25 of businesses I started and failed in the past 20 years. And this is the only business that's always been there. I had a lot of other ones that I did offshoots of it, they all failed. And they all failed, or they were the wrong time, or they were too early, which is a lot of my problems sometimes, is I'm way ahead of time. But what I want to say is that if you were to talk to someone today that is graduate, let's say they're not even, let's take college out of it. All right. I want to take somebody that has a burning idea in their head that they're afraid to take the execution step. And that idea could be $1,000 idea or it could be $1 million idea. It's irrelevant, because we all know that the step is the same for the same person. The first step is the same, no matter what size you are. So talk a little bit about that. Help, like if you were going to coach me kind of through that, or not me specifically, but anybody in general, help somebody understand how that and break that down.
Yeah, so I really want to figure out whether this is something that they are prepared to commit themselves to, or is this just something that they saw on TikTok and thought it would be great? Because there's a difference, and making sure that they understand the journey of an entrepreneur, solopreneur. The other part of that is making sure that they understand that betting on yourself and taking chances and risk, calculated risk, that's an important part of growing, and that you don't fail backwards, you fail forward. You fail forward anytime you're learning and growing. And also I would share with them that this may not be the thing that, is around for forever and a day, but this is a thing that you can mark that you committed yourself to and you learned from it. So really not basing life off of a period, but really realizing that it's the comma for many more doors to open. So I would share that, because, and also would be realistic in saying how much a support system of the right people is important, and not going in alone, and being okay with expressing yourself, and not identifying themselves and branding themselves as a failure if something does not work out right. There is no playbook for it, but by golly, you're going to be testimony for someone else who you will be helping along the way, and you can share your journey. So if you take yourself out of it and realize that you're going to be able to help someone else, and also that it's not about just a point in time, that it's about starting, that's what I'd share with them, because it's scary whether you're 50 or whether you're 12, I mean, you just don't have the mortgage at the 12, but you have that.
That's exactly.
But it's also the thing that fires you up. I mean, the desire to, achieve. So.
I recently, I guess it was 2 days ago, so I'll figure out how to put this in post-production. But my English teacher from high school, Matthew Kearney, I'm going to have him on here eventually. He actually 62, 63, maybe, I don't know. But he just made an attempt, and it wasn't an attempt. He fully invested in doing the Appalachian Trail. So his attempt did not work out. So he ended up having to bail out at a certain point of it. But my point in not bringing that part up is actually the opposite. Is yesterday he 60 some years old, and he started a YouTube channel this week, and he documented his entire journey and didn't post anything during it. But now he's going back and playing it all. And I get chills actually telling you this right now, but like literally his first video that he put up is about failure. And he's like, and it's just, the title is "I Failed the Appalachian Trail." and the amount of past students that are commenting under it and just saying like, thank you. Like,
yeah, I mean, you learn so much from that, and it's so important that listeners and regardless, I mean, because I will tell people, I was an entrepreneur before I was an entrepreneur. You did it in a protected place where you could do those things, but it was okay to break things, because one of those things are going to work, and it's going to catapult not only you, but the work that you're doing and how it's going to help other people. So no, don't ever see it as failure. And I love that you said you had 25 stories. Not 25 failures, but 25 stories that you get to share.
I like that. Thank you. Actually, I appreciate that. I'm going to change the way I say that. Yeah. I got 25 stories. Some of them are funny. My first one was called Meatopia. So I wanted to get a grill at Sam's Club, but it was $500. And it was this big 62 hamburger grill. And I'm like 22 maybe or something like that. And I didn't have the money to do it. And then all of a sudden there was the First Friday Arts Festival, and I lived on Main Street, and it was outside my door. And I went online in Pennsylvania, and I saw that you didn't have to get a health permit for 5. You could do 5 events before you had to file with all the filings and all the permits. So I went to Sam's Club and I bought the grill, and I brought the grill back and I put it outside my house and I drug it up the sidewalk and I put a sign out in front of it called Meatopia. And I sat out there I did 4 sessions because it was all I could do before I did the health permit. And then I actually got really embarrassed because the newspaper came and they interviewed me, and then it was in the paper, and people started calling me saying, like, booking for catering gigs because they love the name, and I'm like, I'm not a real business. I was just sitting outside my house.
Oh, that's the thing where, starting out, and if it ends up being bigger than you, then you have even the capacity to even carry out. So, yeah.
I'll make sure to put a photo up to make fun of myself when I do the edit in here for the video. I think there's one of me with all the burgers in front of me and dogs. But I want to go back to and talk about for you a little bit. Like, I want to go, like, if we can do so little in these last few minutes. I do want to go on the gender part, and I do want to go into the woman of color part. Yeah. And I want to hear you, and I want you to have the rest of this time, and I mean that all the way through, as long as you want, to tell those people specifically what you want to say to them.
Yeah, so it's important that we all look at the ways that we can be a door opener. All of the jobs my professional jobs that I've had, I've been the first woman and first person of color, or even the youngest, every job. And I now know that it was never about me, but it was also about opening a door, and a door wide enough that there would be more people. And I'm not just saying Black, I'm saying any woman, any person with, whatever challenge, disability, different ability, but really opening the door to see someone else perform at a high level and know that you can do this too. That's what it was always about. And to be a mentor, that when you got there, it was not that you would stop. It would be, how could you bring other women and girls in so that they could ask the question, so that it would become something that was normal and not abnormal. And the thing that said, oh my gosh, we got the one. I'd love for that one to be 1,000. It's like, how do you multiply that even more? So I think once you achieve a spot like that, then it's important that you give back, and it's important that you share. Just like with the platform today, it's important that I get to share with the listeners that yes, you should hire the best person. And if that best person happens to be a woman, then you absolutely should go after and hire more of what got you the results that you desired. I love that. I love the fact that you, with innovation and entrepreneurship, it's not a race thing. It's not a color thing. It's not a gender thing. You literally could have this best idea and go out there and do this thing. It's not to say that there aren't sometimes barriers and people not having information, but really you could be the CEO of you. It is the thing that levels the playing field. Even when you think about rural communities across the country, what separates and provides a way outside of just having a high school diploma is entrepreneurship. So this is the same thing, whether you're a housewife and you got this great idea, or whether you're, whatever the case, wherever life meets you at right now, my voice would be to say to you that you too can be that next great big idea, and to start. Doesn't mean that you start off with a conglomeration. Heck, you might start out in your garage, but you've started. You might start on every Saturday at the flea market, but you've started. And to not celebrate those milestones, you've got to celebrate them. You've got to make sure that you're proud of them, and that you don't hide it under the rug because you got 5 customers when somebody else has 5,000. Well, they started off and they had the number 5 at one point as well. So really, to think about the opportunities. Don't exclude yourself. Don't look, it's like looking in the window out the window at someone else and saying, hey, I really wish I could be out there too. Open the door and get out there. Open the door and get out there. Be a part of it. So that's my take and lease on life. If I want to do it, then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm not going to be quiet while I'm doing it. I'm going to let the whole world know that this too can be done. And let's do this thing together at the highest level. So Nate, thank you. I mean, I think your daughters have a great role model in you for one, acknowledging this, but also taking it to the highest platform here for other women and others to be able to share and talk about the importance and the role and place of women.
And exactly. And I appreciate it. And Dr. Kim, I can't say enough how much I appreciate you taking the time today. I really I just, I know you're busy and I know you have a lot going on. And the fact that you gave your space and your focus and your time, I just want to express to you eye to eye, even though we're on remote, that I just appreciate it. So.
Well, as long as your virtual door is open, I will always come back to you. I have had a ball.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Moore. I really appreciate it. Hey, let anybody to find you on LinkedIn and any other aspects of where they can follow your journey as we close out. And I just can't, I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So I am easy to find, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's X, the new Twitter, but X or even Instagram. And it's Envision Moore, of course. And then definitely tune into the podcast, Workforce Insights, and then say more, because there's a lot to say. So thank you, Nate, for having me on as a guest.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. You have a great rest of your day.
If you have a story to share or you know someone with an inspiring journey, the FreeMind Podcast wants to hear from you. Submit your story or nominate somebody to be our next guest. Check out our website, thefreemindpodcast.com, and be a part of the conversation that truly matters.